Okay, we are live and welcome back to the Arrrgh Book Club. Today we're going to be discussing As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts because I feel like we have a lot to talk about with this book. So, do you want to go first?
I have many thoughts. I thought I would like it more than I did.
Ooh, okay.
Like I feel like I read it I read it on paper and I listened to it like so different parts
Same.
or different things. I don't think I was crazy about the audio narration. Like I found myself liking the book better when I was reading. And I think since I started off listening to it, I think I would have done better with it if I'd started off reading it as opposed to listening to it. It definitely picked up for me as it went on. Like I think the first third of the book was probably my least favorite, and then it picked up. Like there was a definite point at which I became interested. Because at the beginning, my main point of interest was that I don't know anything about the war in Syria. Like I really, beyond like,
Same.
I
I had to
mean,
go do some
all
research.
of, yeah, like all of my prior knowledge could have fit in a meme. Like there was nothing substantive about it. So I really enjoyed learning about something that is contemporary that I have like allowed to escape my not like my radar really, you know. And even the timing of the things was so surprising to me. Like I kept wanting to think that it was like further in the past, you know, like this was a story I was reading about like in the 80s or the 90s and not like now. So I thought the book did a great job of bringing a present day conflict into like its harsh reality as opposed to its like moving poetic type of like, I don't know, like we can do a lot with present conflict that is either like unbelievably grotesque or unbelievably like inspirational. You know, I find
Yeah.
that the middle ground with present day conflict is like harder to find in fiction especially. So I appreciated the book. I wouldn't say like for me it wasn't a book that I enjoyed reading, you know.
I can understand. I mean, it's not what I would call enjoyable reading. Like, it is
Yeah.
definitely a hard book to get through. I actually really, really liked it. I gave it 5 stars because it made
Mm-hmm.
me cry. And anytime a book can
Mm-hmm.
make me cry, it's an automatic 5 star because, like, obviously
Yeah.
I was invested enough that you could hurt me.
Right. Yeah.
So, so there was a lot. Like, I ended up backing up, and I don't know if you can even see that. I was
Yeah.
annotating as I went, and I found tabs that matched the book almost perfectly because they're all
Mm-hmm.
blue. And
Yeah.
so it
That blue
felt
is
very,
so beautiful.
yeah.
That deep blue on the front with the
Oh, I
teal blue.
love the book
So
cover.
beautiful.
It's so pretty.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked getting a better perspective. Like, I was aware that there was a war in Syria, but I really didn't know anything about it besides the location of the war. So I
Mm-hmm.
liked getting to see, like, firsthand through just a regular person's eyes, like what that is like to experience. Because, like, I don't know, I like reading things that help me to gain perspective on something that I myself have never experienced, that I will hopefully never experience, you know, so that
Mm-hmm.
I can better understand current events. Um, so I really liked getting to see that. And I agree the audiobook wasn't my favorite, but I really wanted to listen to it because I had no idea how to pronounce any of the names correctly. Like, I
Yeah.
was pretty confident with Layla and Salama, but everything else I was like a little bit iffy. So I wanted to have the audio for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was in terms of plotting and pace, I thought it was dead on.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like the
Yeah.
tension of it. In a similar way to the postcard, like I think this book did a good job with that reality of daily life, you know, like the
Yes.
walk home and the
Mm-hmm.
tension of that and like waiting for someone to be there and like not knowing, you know, that in between hours of like every moment not being physically present with that person is like a
Yeah.
tense moment, you know, simply by virtue of not being there. Those kinds of things think I captured really well. I think I have a sensitivity to books about anything even neighboring my own like religious heritage or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. I think I have this weird I don't know. Like, it's not a resistance exactly. It's, I think we all have like a mythology about our own culture, and Syrian
Mm-hmm.
culture is not my own, but it is tangential, right? Having an Islamic background. And I don't know, I've recognized it in myself. Like when I read books that are tangential to these things, like my bar for what is pleasing, and I don't mean like enjoyable in the sense of this is like a war-torn region and the
Yeah.
whole story is like, hard. There's something there, and I don't know if you experience that, but like there's something there that gives me this, my bar is different than
Mm.
when it's a culture that's different than my own entirely. So
Yeah. So
I don't know.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. I did find some discussion questions. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to because sometimes with newer books, they don't have anything available, but I did find some questions because technically this is a YA book, which I feel like it's not. It didn't feel like a
Yeah.
YA book to me.
It didn't feel like a YA book to me either, except for the fact that she was young when it started,
Yeah.
Or
And
like that
I'm wondering, did they assign it as YA specifically because of that? Because the writing style and like the content and all of that, I felt like this was more of a, if I had to pick like new adult as opposed to YA.
I agree.
But I did find like there was a lot of scholastic question guide type things online because of that. And I'm like, interesting. But yeah, like
the drama that this book spoke to is more understandable for like an older audience.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in this, I think some of the things that she spoke to are just, for a young adult, difficult to immerse themselves in. Like I just feel like emotionally there's something that comes of having to care for others, right? Like as a parent or as a young new adult, like this idea of having to do it on your own. That was, I don't know. I agree with you though. I didn't think it was YA, and I don't know if you've read, like, have you read Dicey's Song and Homecoming? So those were like, those, I mean, I read them when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13. They're written as YA, and they also have very mature topics. And it's not the topic necessarily. There was something about the immense solitude of this experience, like this book, that I feel like put it in an older category as well.
Yeah.
Like having to bear it all.
Yeah, and I also really liked the way she wrote about PTSD. Because I think, I mean, I don't have experience with that, but like I think it's often written about in a way that isn't necessarily true to like what the actual experience is. And the way she sort of like made it a separate character and had the PTSD, the fear, like, and I don't know if I'll say it right, but Health, I think is how it's pronounced, and have it be this character who like shows you all of your anxieties and shows you all of the bad things that can happen. I thought that was really interesting, an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting too. And I really like the last scene with Health on the boat, which is not, I guess, not the last scene, because the last scene is like, when she's in deciding whether to jump or not. But when he talks to her, then I found that part to be super moving. Like, to say, like, because they've had such a contentious relationship, right? And we can all have this contentious relationship with this like inner monologue, that we have with ourselves, where it's almost like it's outside of ourselves, particularly when it's coming from a place of fear or anxiety. Like there's this like punishing aspect to it, but I found it really beautiful at the end, because while it can be harsh, it's also so protective. Like the idea is to like keep you going, to keep you safe. Like the motivation behind that, even that harsh inner monologue that we have, is so protective. Like it's trying its best.
Yeah.
So
So let's roll through some of the questions here. Layla says to Salama, this revolution is about us getting our lives back. It's not about survival. Do you agree? And why do you think revolutions happen? I mean, I would say, like, what's the difference between just a war and a revolution? Like, I think either way, it's pretty awful for everybody involved. But like, I guess you can see like having it be a revolution is a way to think about it in a more positive way. Like there's an end goal, there's a light at the end if we can just get through to that. But I don't think it makes it any easier.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to add to that. I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I think that having a goal can keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like the day to day is so hard that, I mean, especially with her job in the hospital and continuously seeing it. It's not like she's sitting in a house, you know, having it happen around her or anything. Like she like is right there, like with everybody's trauma, not just her own.
And just the idea that she went from being just a pharmacy student to being forced into like learning how to do surgery, like that's wild. I could never. I can't even fathom like just the mental fortitude it would take to be able to do that. Like it's wild to me, like what people are capable of given the right circumstances.
Yeah. Who is your, before you get to your next question, who is your favorite character in this book?
I really, really liked both Layla and Kenan. I think both of them were such positive forces for Salama, and I think like they both brought so much light to the story, which I think was so necessary in a book like this to have something positive. So just both of those characters giving her things to live for, reasons to keep going.
Who are yours? I mean, I think probably Layla and Hauf. You know, like I found them to be like opposing sides of the same like coin in a way, you know. Where particularly like when you are in a dark place for whatever reason, like it's so helpful to have someone in your life who is just that like, you know, that cheery like sunshine dollop, like that person who's just like sees it all and understands you, and you know that you're understood, but is also very, you know, they cannot help but be like sunshine in and of themselves. I think that's such a relief. And then I also just really liked the way she portrayed anxiety and how it talks to you. Sometimes I felt like it was almost too contentious, but then I don't know what it would be like to have that type of anxiety, that type of fear. You know, I really don't. Like I don't. And I imagine that
like I have anxiety, but I don't know what it would look like in that kind of situation. I feel like it would be a lot harsher to deal with.
Yeah, I feel like it's harsh in regular life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, much harsher than it needs to be. So I think that was probably an accurate, like, amplification of that.
Yeah. Actually, I saw an interview with the author, and apparently the first version of this book that she was pitching was called something like, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, or something like that. And it was really, really dark. It was like nothing but trauma and pain. And I guess people were like, okay, yes, but we need some hope here. And so she like took it back and like did her whole rewrite. And I'm so glad she did, because I think it's a lot better because of that hope in the story.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of trauma to be had, but I
Mm,
think it would be especially hard to read the story without any glimmer of
yeah,
like
yeah.
the end.
And I did when I was trying to do some research to like learn more about what was happening. There was a video that I was like on the verge of sharing in the Discord group that I was like, I don't know, it might be too hard for people to like actually see the visuals of it, but it was like footage from Hums and stuff and like
Yeah,
the just day-to-day life there, and it was so upsetting and so
yeah.
distressing to watch. And I was like, wow, like I can't even imagine that being my daily life, like living through something like that. So yeah, like it was definitely a book that needed some glimmers of hope.
Mhm. It's an interesting read. I mean, I'm trying to think about reading this, like if I had read it in, you know, I don't know. What is YA classified for now, really? Like,
I don't even know, because I know originally it was supposed to be like teenagers, so like
right,
13 to
right,
18.
like high school. Yeah,
I feel like it's been like nudged up.
yeah.
So like I don't know, I really think we need a new designation, like something in the middle, because
I think a lot has happened to the classification where it's like if it's, you know, not explicit in any way,
mm,
then it can be YA. Like there's this like understanding that like if it's not like something that would have been an R-rated movie, then it can be YA. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. Like,
no, like
so
this was a very like heavy, emotionally challenging story, and
yeah.
I think that needs to be taken into account too. Like this is not a
Yeah.
book that I would hand to a 13, 14, maybe not even a 15-year-old, not unless they've read other things that are similarly heavy, because I think it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
It was a
Or
lot
unless
of
they're
information.
studying this in particular.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like if they're studying this in particular, then perhaps. But
yeah.
even then, I mean,
Even
that's,
then, I think I would
yeah,
probably want to back up and find like a middle grade, something that would be a
exactly.
lot lighter but still on topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about how we designate like children's literature, because it's been weird for a while now, and I'm baffled sometimes at like what gets classified as YA, what gets classified as middle grade. Yeah,
I mean, I think the marketing machine too has changed that a
yeah.
lot
I
too.
think the
But
fact that so many adults are reading YA now has like pushed it up, um,
yeah.
to the detriment of the teens who need those books. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I thought this book did a really interesting thing with the refugee experience too, because I mean I've read books about refugees before, but usually it's like after the fact, like they've
Mm-hmm.
already made it
Yeah.
out. And so
Yeah.
reading about like the process of like figuring out how to leave, if you should leave, like I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was really, really interesting, because
Yeah.
like
And
I
the
didn't know that I'd
loyalties
read
you
anything like
owe.
that before.
Yeah. She had so many conflicting loyalties. Like, I mean, the loyalty to her brother who still has to be there, so it's like you're leaving the person who wants you to leave and who wants you to care for someone. All of that wrapped into one, like the
Mm-hmm.
loyalty to the people she can serve, the patients she could take care of. I mean, there's only this many people who can do it. Like I always thought about that even in the Palestine thing where you see people leaving finally, like the press on the ground and staffing and hospital staffing. I mean, at a certain point, like when you will die, like what do you do?
Yeah.
Like that's
Especially if you have other people in your life that you're trying to care for, like you have to
Mhm.
prioritize, and that is so
Yeah,
complicated, because
yeah.
yeah,
Like
like
you are a mother and you are a sister and you
yeah,
are a daughter to other people
yeah,
elsewhere.
like the
Yeah.
conversations they have in the story about like reasons to go and reasons to stay, I thought was just really interesting, because you don't generally think about that. You just think about, oh, it's a
Mhm.
bad situation, you need to get out, like,
Yeah.
and there are complicating factors. So I thought that was very well portrayed.
Yeah, for sure.
And just like the experience of leaving, of like going through the checkpoints and like just all of that, like seeing the whole thing play out was really interesting.
The number of checkpoints.
Oh my gosh,
like,
yes.
When they went to the first one, it was like, how
that
many
is
more?
So scary. I don't know that
my
I
heart like dropped. I was like, I can't.
Yeah, I was so stressed out and thinking they had to do that 15 times. Like, I could not. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've made for something like that. Like, I don't know, but it was very moving and interesting to read about. It definitely makes me think differently about like people who are able to get out and like start over, like what they had to go through just to get there. So yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, okay, so how do you feel about charging thousands of dollars to desperate people wanting a better life? I struggled a little bit with that. I understood where he was coming from. I don't know that it's right. I don't know that I understand like needing to be able to provide for your family and that sort of thing. And but I also think like that is wrong in so many ways to make people pay thousands of dollars, give up their whole livelihood and everything they would be able to live on once they make it out. Like it's rough. I don't understand why he didn't just leave. Like he knows how to get out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think there's always been in every refugee situation, right? There's always someone willing to capitalize on the situation. And I mean, I can't think of a time, right? Like when that wasn't a thing where you would be able to pay someone who I guess is assuming the risk of being the person who's handling.
Yeah, because on the one side, like he's in just as much danger as they are going through all those checkpoints. So like, I can see like wanting to be compensated for the risk I'm taking on, but also like
it makes you a certain person.
Yeah.
Like it definitely makes you a certain type of person. I mean,
I'm
sure there are people helping also without that compensation.
You
know, I just don't think it's probably as smooth.
Yeah, and so like when Salama uses his wounded daughter against him, like I didn't feel bad about that. I felt like, okay, you know, if you're gonna be like that, then we're gonna do this and give you a little taste of your own medicine. So like I don't know. I felt like
there is that ruthless part, right? Like you need to. I think that also would be something difficult. Like I remember one of my friends had moved to Tennessee and she was saying how everyone there had bug out bags. And this was like 2015, 2016, right around that time when political tensions were getting high and people were like, you know, what's going to happen and stuff. And I was like, what is a bug out bag? You know, like what is this thing? And I guess like wherever she lived, like everyone had like a tote in their car with like ammunition and you know, food and supplies and all of the things. And I was like, and she's like, you know, and for a while I was like, this is silly. And then I was like, but everyone has one, so I'm going to get one too. And they just drive around with it. And I was like, I went to my husband, I was like, we don't have a bug out bag. Like, we don't have anything like that. Like if something happens, I'd be like, how many cans of chickpeas do we have left? You know, but I don't know that I would have a plan. And he was like, we have guns. And I was like, oh. And he's like, yeah, like we just go and get a bug out bag from someone else. And I was like, what? And he was like, this is, if it really went down and it was a situation where whatever, he's like, it'll depend on people who have the means to take resources from other people. And I was like, but we wouldn't do that. And he was like, if it was up to you and your children and like there was no more food coming, you know, what wouldn't you do? Like, you know, what wouldn't you do? And it's a real thought of like, it's easy to sit in like, you know, a house and like have all your food and your resources and your children safe and say like, I wouldn't do this or I wouldn't do that. I think it becomes a lot harder to say what you would or would not do.
Yeah. I mean, I read a lot of dystopian apocalyptic books. So
Right.
Like, sure, like I think about scenarios all the time. Like, what would I
Yeah.
actually do? What am I
Yeah.
capable of doing? Like, if my children were in danger, like what would I be willing to do? So I think about things like that probably more than normal people do. but but like I don't know. I always wonder, like, when shit hits the fan, like what would I do? Because I don't have
Yeah.
a bug out bag. Like, I've thought about
Yeah.
making one. I've thought about, like, what scenario would I need to have this? Like, what would happen? Like, I feel relatively safe in my
Yeah.
little country town, but like if I lived in a city, I think I'd be a lot more nervous, more
Yeah.
willing to be more prepared because like there's more people. Um, but yeah,
No,
I
we don't
think
have, I mean, it's, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I can't read really too many dystopian novels because it makes me really like stressed out. Like I feel like all kinds of things. Like I read The Road and,
oh, I've never read The
and
Road. I've been a little. That's the one I'm afraid of.
oh man. Oh
I've never been
man.
able to make my. I think I own it. I have it. I just have never been able to bring myself to read it because it just seems
Yeah.
too bleak.
It's
Like
it's so bleak.
I like my
It's so bleak.
apocalyptic fiction to have like glimmers in it, just something, some kind of hope.
Give
And I
me
feel like,
that, like it gave me
yeah,
restless sleep for like months. I was like,
yeah,
I can't do this.
I don't know.
So it
That
was
one,
excellent, but
yeah,
I mean,
someday. That's the one I've been like, someday I'll read it, but not
yeah,
yet.
it was a
Too
5-star read
dark
for
right
me, but
now.
I was like, I'm never recommending this to anyone because I love everyone. I want them to get their sleep. So it was tough. No, I think this book, I really liked how she brought in elements of like joy, the way you remember things in this like
Mhm.
visceral way. Um,
Yeah, talking about the colors, I thought was a really
yeah, yeah,
beautiful moment. Yeah, I love
yeah, that kind of
like
thing.
just watching a sunset and things like that is such a small
Hmm.
thing that can have so much meaning behind it depending on the
Yeah.
situation you're in. So
I
yeah,
think this would actually make a very interesting graphic novel too, this book, if
it
they did make
would.
it
I
into
had that
one.
same thought that I was like, I
Yeah,
want to see this visually in some way. Like, I think it would be a really interesting adaptation at some point
yeah.
too if they were to make it into a TV series or a movie.
They should
But
do a Studio Ghibli one of it. It'd be
oh my
great
gosh, they
with all the,
should. That
you
would be
know,
so interesting. Like, I'm sure I missed like all the references in this book
yeah.
because I've only ever seen like one Studio Ghibli movie. So I'm
How
not,
is that possible? You
I
were
know,
like made
Sarah's
for
mad at
Studio
me.
Ghibli. How is
I
that possible? I don't
I
understand.
don't know. I need to go and like, I know we've seen like Totoro, and it was
Yeah,
on while I was in the room, but I wasn't really paying attention.
yeah,
So I've seen like parts of that. So I guess like one and a half because I've watched
yeah.
what did I see? Oh shoot, what's it called? The one with Calcifer
Oh yeah, yeah.
and the house. Like, I can't think of
Yes.
the name of
Yeah,
it, but yeah,
no.
that's the only one
I,
I've seen in full.
right.
So like I didn't get most of the references in this. I know Sarah read this book when it first came out, and she's been trying to get me to read it since then.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'll get there eventually, but she loves Studio Ghibli, so she knows like all the things and
Yeah.
understood all the references more than I did. But yeah, so I missed probably all of the little Easter eggs and things. But it did make
It
me
would
want
be
to go watch
beautiful.
the movies more.
Yeah, I felt like there was something about the colors, like you were saying in this book. She conveyed very much the like grayness of like war
Mm-hmm.
compared to like this like the color of like memory and the color of the things we can still see, like the sunset and things like this. So,
Yeah, and I
but
think too, like going back and watching that video I found with footage from the war, like
mhm,
made that so much more of a visual experience because talking about the grayness of war and seeing just like the rubble that people were living in and seeing
mhm,
how absolutely bleak that was. Children just like wandering through like destroyed buildings and picking up little things here and there. And I don't know, it was it made it so much more real, it is
mhm.
real, which I think is important to remember when you're reading a book like this too. Like, this was a thing that really happened. that is
Yeah,
still
putting the
ongoing.
dates into perspective was crazy to me. Yeah, that
Yeah.
it's still ongoing. Like, it only really occurred to me when she mentioned the Arab Spring, you know,
Hmm.
and like said things like this all kind of like intensified after Arab Spring.
Hmm.
And I was like, Arab Spring, really? Like, I just had a different timeline in my head
Yeah.
for what was going on in
Same.
Syria. Like, I don't know what I thought was happening now, but it
Yeah.
wasn't this.
To be fair, like my sense of time in the last
Yeah,
little while is a mess. So
yeah,
like I
I
don't know
agree.
what's happening when. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
realizing like this was very recent and it's still happening.
yeah, for sure.
It's very sad. Like I also thought it was interesting too, and this is probably just a me thing, but reading about this like deep devotion and attachment to place
Mm.
was really interesting to me because like I don't feel that about America. Like I'm
Yeah.
glad that I'm here, that I'm in a safe place, that whatever,
Mm.
but like I don't have that like
Yeah.
deep attachment to place, which I thought was just I don't know. I always think it's interesting to read about when people like have that feeling
Hmm.
and it's like part of your culture and like everything revolves around this place, which I think is just not something most Americans experience.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like what we celebrate is so different, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
I think like our most common holiday is like Halloween. You know, like there's
Yeah,
this weird, like the
yeah.
one where we all do the same type of thing for the most
Mm-hmm.
part and like all go out and have this communal experience, but um that doesn't make for like deep patriotism. You know, Halloween
No,
is not going to cut it.
but
Like
like
I, I don't
I
know.
thought it was
I think
very interesting. Like
yeah,
if I were in danger and I had to flee, I don't know that my concern would necessarily be I don't want to leave this place. I
yeah,
don't know that I would have that
yeah.
thought or feeling. I think it would be more about like I need to escape danger and get my children to safety and that sort of thing. So I didn't
Mhm.
really I don't feel that emotion. So it was really interesting to read about somebody and how they were viewing the place they are from.
My brother and I talk about this a lot because when I grew up, I went to school in Long Island, and they are the school I went to was a public school, but they were very into like, USA pride. It was
Mm,
like this New Englandy kind of thing, I guess. Because everybody else I know who went to school in that same era in New England have this, like, I mean, we celebrated all the days, any day that had anything to do with America, okay? Like Flag Day, President's Day, all the days. There was dressing up, there was parades, like through the little roundabout in front of the school. I mean, we lined up with like balloons, like to make the American flag, like the entire school and
wow.
release them, you know, not great for the environment, but like as an elementary school kid, every year to do this, like to have like, a thing of flags. I thought this was normal. I thought this was like what everybody did across the country, but it wasn't. And so I had this very big sense of like, rah rah America. Like I really did. And I remember, like as your illusions about what America
Hmm.
is as a nation sort of are stripped away,
Yeah.
um, it was deeply upsetting to me because like I was sold like a certain bill of goods that I very
Hmm.
much appreciated, like as a kid, like a
Yeah.
construction paper bill of goods. And I think that if we had more of that sense of unity, like I think it would be different, like our current discourse
Hmm.
in this
Yes.
country, because
I
I
feel
think
like
it's, I
every
mean,
now and then we have moments where
yeah,
everyone can come together, but it's so short
yeah,
lived. It's not
exactly.
something that we hold on to very long. I
Yeah.
feel like
And
for
it's also
example,
a
during the
little bit,
Olympics, like we get that
yeah,
sense of
yeah,
pride,
yeah,
but that's like
exactly.
the only time.
Yeah. And it's very fleeting and it's not
It is.
based on something that, I mean, I forget which Scandinavian country it is. I want to say it's like Norway or Sweden or Finland. Well, one of them. Like one of them does this thing where, like, I guess for if you are an immigrant to the country and a child, like you are enrolled in some sort of mandatory, like, learn about this particular country's history class, and you have to do it and you have to be in it. And I think that, so my husband and I were talking about like, is this like a good thing to do, or is this one of those things where you're trying to like strip away their own nationality and like give them a new nationality? And I have mixed feelings on it, honestly, because I feel like having some sort of pride in ownership you know, like that club membership to like the country you are living in can be very helpful to like integrating with that country and to actually feel like you're part of that country. And knowing those things can make like native people feel more like welcoming also. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if you can all share in like a common tradition,
Yeah.
even though it's new to you, I think that can be helpful because sometimes like not knowing like how something works or who a particular historical figure is or what a celebration is, it can be so isolating, you know, and it marks you as like an outsider. I don't know that in America we have enough common tradition to learn about. You know, like
Yeah.
so many of the things that we used to rest our hat on, like Thanksgiving and stuff, these things have been like, you know, we've had to learn a new history about them. And if
Yes.
everybody was on board with that new history, that would be one thing. But it's not, right?
No,
There's
we're
this
not.
like,
Yeah, that's the thing.
yeah,
I think there's like, I don't even think it's two. I think we have a lot of
yeah,
separate
yeah,
pieces happening here where everyone's on different teams and different sides
right,
and views through a different lens. And I think that makes it almost impossible. I don't know that
yeah.
I can't even think of like how we could bring everyone in. I don't think you can. I think for one thing, America's too big. There's
Yeah.
too many like different groups. It's almost like 50 different countries all pulled
Yeah.
together. And even within those countries, everyone's kind of separate. So like it's almost impossible to have that like
I
sense
mean,
of national pride.
when I lived in Texas, like there was a Texan pride. And I was
Mm.
like, any state is going to become its own like country with like a real sense
I've
of
always
like,
thought if anyone, yeah,
yeah,
Texas would definitely be its own
they're
thing.
like, they have
Yeah.
like a history. Like there's like families there and stuff who like literally talk about like the first time you meet them, like how like their families have been there for
Mm-hmm.
this long and they're this family and they own this ranch. And I'm like, this is wild. Like, this is like, you know, it's so interesting to hear people talk about it like House of Dragons. Like I'm from this
Mm-hmm.
like it was
Yeah.
wild. I was like, this is okay. I'm just here for like coffee. You know, like I mean it was really something to see. And I don't hate it. Like I think it's I think having that type of pride in where you come from and the soil your family
Mm-hmm.
has been on for this long has a lot of value. I think the danger comes when it becomes exclusionary, you know, like
Yeah.
and so you deserve something for having had that history versus someone else. You know, like I think
Yeah.
then that's where the danger arises. So
Let's see if we have any other questions we haven't already touched on.
did anyone else look up? I don't know if anyone's on this chat, but if anyone else looked up the geography of this place, the Middle East is something I cannot hold on to in my head. I don't understand what's wrong with me. Like I will look up the Middle East whenever some conflict is going on, and then I like get it in my head, and then I like lose it again, and it becomes a little bit loose, like a little bit loosey
Mm-hmm.
goosey as to like where all the countries really like whose borders are whose, like you know, like I
I'm a
understand like
geography
who's
nerd,
north and
so
south and
like
east and west.
I do pay attention a lot to
That's
things like
great.
that. So I like
Yeah,
maps and stuff. But so I have
yeah,
a little bit of perspective on the area. I mean, I know location wise where it is. I had to go look up the Mediterranean and see like how far did they need to go because
yeah, yeah,
I was like, I didn't think they were that close to Italy. Like, how far are they traveling by boat? Like that part I was a
yeah.
little iffy on. Um, so I did look at a map just to kind of gauge like, okay, they're here. How far do they have to go to get
Mm-hmm.
to there? But but yeah, like I know like location wise in the Middle East where Syria is and like what borders it and that sort of thing. But yeah, I needed the visual for the escape route.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting to me because my mental map of the Mediterranean is my ancient map of the Mediterranean is
Hmm.
much more present in my head
Yeah,
than the current map of the Mediterranean. It's always remained that way, which is fairly useless considering we don't talk about Phoenicians anymore. You
yeah.
know, but
Um, let's see. I think we've actually touched on almost everything here. So So if you could think of anything we didn't talk about, but I think like question wise, I feel like we would just be repeating ourselves if we went through any more questions.
I think the only other interesting thing to talk about is just, like I thought she did a really good job of portraying like how joyful this idea of like arranged marriage can be.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The romance, the like fated to
Yeah.
be together thing. I thought that was really interesting because when I think of arranged marriage, I usually think it's going to be terrible because like
Right.
how can you build a relationship with someone you don't know? And
Right.
like that doesn't seem like it would work. But having the two of them like and their mothers be like, "Oh, you're for
Yeah.
my son. Like you guys
Yeah.
go together." Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I would not trust my mother to choose my mate. So I
Yeah.
think it
Same.
was
Fair.
interesting that
Fair.
like they actually had their best interest in mind and like saw the connection that they would have. I thought that
Yeah.
was really
I think
sweet.
I think it can be done really well as somebody who's seen people like my contemporaries have arranged marriages and also like aunts and uncles and things like that. I think it can be done really well. I think it can go really badly too, but
Mm-hmm.
so can, what we call them love matches, right? Like
Yeah.
they can, I think,
You really don't
I think
know.
it
You don't know
depends.
what's going to happen in the future. You don't know like
Yeah.
how you might grow and change and that kind of thing. But like I really liked seeing their relationship kind of play out almost
Yeah.
in slow motion because it happened like
Hmm.
they come together in such a slow like maybe we shouldn't kind of way, and I just thought it
Yeah.
was really beautiful to read. Like
I
I
thought
love
that was very realistically done.
it
Like I was
was,
very believable,
and
the
especially for
timing and
like
tempo.
their culture and like how should we go about this? We don't have
Yeah.
chaperones, and we don't
Exactly.
have the people we would have normally.
Yeah.
So yeah.
To guide it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The
So I thought
comfort
it
of
was.
having had that prior like approval too, I think
Mm-hmm.
would have helped a lot. But
Yeah.
I liked it because you don't often see that. Like you don't often see like, you know, the twinkle about like an arranged marriage that can happen when
Mm-hmm.
people are really like looking out for you. So,
Yeah.
growing up, I mean, like I had a lot of feelings about arranged marriage, but I also saw lots of them that worked out beautifully. So
Mm.
it depends on the people.
Yeah. My mother used to be like, that guy would be for you. And I'm like, that is not for me.
Yeah. Oh,
We didn't know that many Jewish families. And she was always like, you should marry a Jew. And I'm like, well, I have nothing to choose from.
definitely had a similar experience. So
Yeah.
I did my own thing. But
Yeah. Okay.
here we are.
Somewhere I have, oh, here it is. The book for this month in
I'm
August.
so excited about this
I
one.
am so excited to get into this. I've had this on my shelf for a while, and I've just been like holding on to it because I'm like, I feel like this is a book club book, and so I hadn't read
Yeah.
it yet. So, but yeah, I again don't really know a ton about the plot of this. Just like stuff about the setting,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, that's all I need
Yeah.
because the setup here feels like it's made for me. Like I
Yeah.
love magical school settings. I love Victorian London. I love like the like dark academia-ness of it. So very much looking forward to reading this month. So I'll probably get the like discussion stuff up in the Discord group, if not later today, definitely by tomorrow, in case anyone's already started. It is a big book. I'm slightly intimidated, but I feel like it's probably going to read really fast. So I'm not too worried about that.
It's catching the light beautifully. Like as you were holding it, it's very
Yeah,
like
it's a really like
very magical.
pretty
Yeah,
cover. Like I like the
it
shiny.
really is. Yeah.
I need to figure out how to get that sticker off. It's really on there.
I don't know why people do that.
I hate that. I really wish they wouldn't. Or if they were going to do that, use a better sticker because there are
On the
stickers that
back.
peel right off.
Yeah. Why can't everyone do that? Like the
I don't
stickers on
know.
plastic
Like,
organizing bins are amazing for the
they
most part.
are.
Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, whatever adhesive this is needs to be like more widely used.
Yes. I'm probably going to have to try to blow dry this and see if that works. but I'm scared to pick at it too much because it's right on the cover. Like,
yeah. I feel like those are not book people. Whoever like decides on stickers for books. Whoever decided that was a good idea. Or to slap the embossing imprint of like a book club that is not removable.
I hate that. Yeah, like
what is this? Yeah.
There should be like universal rules about such things.
I know, and it's not like fans have not spoken out.
Right? Like, I mean, that's pretty much everyone's thing. Yeah. Like everyone, whenever you talk about bookish pet peeves, that's like the number one is stickers on books, and yet they won't stop.
Exactly. I don't want the gigantic 10% off special sticker either. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That has never induced anyone to buy a book or not buy a book. Please stop. Nobody is like, oh my goodness, now today it's 10% off. I'm going to get it. So we are hopelessly going to buy the full price book. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So I just pulled up my calendar, and it looks like the first Saturday in September is the 7th. So does that work for you?
I'm pretty sure that does. I think the fencing schedule has to come out for my middle. But when that comes out, I can tell you for sure if there's a regional or something that day.
Okay, so tentatively, our live show for this book, Ordinary Monsters, will be on September 7th. Same time, same place. Mm-hmm. So we'll see you guys then. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us today and talking about As Long as 11 Trees Grow. And we will see you next month. Happy reading. Bye.
Happy reading.